Well, hi there, and welcome back to another edition of The Evidence. This is your buddy Dave over at MarsX3D, and look at this plane. It is covered with odds and ends all over the place, but over there on the left side, look at those two weird things. Moving in a little bit, we can see this odd lavender-colored artifact, and it kind of resembles a staircase or maybe a building buttress. And behind it, there's this large truncated triangle. Kind of looks like a roofing truss, but most of the detail is hidden in the shade. Nonetheless, you can see the shape. It's plain to see. Getting in a bit closer, we can see to the right of the staircase there's a squared off, half-buried roof, maybe with a couple of window openings. And at the base of the triangle and scattered about are other anomalous items. What an opportunity to exercise the spirit of curiosity, to satisfy the desire to know once and for all whether these things are artificial or not. Enough said. By the way, are you new to anomaly hunting? You know, anomalies don't usually just jump out of an image and announce themselves. And that means that as an anomalist, you must make a careful examination at magnification to find the strange, the unusual, the out of place. Later on, as your eye adapts after viewing thousands of images, anomalies will indeed jump out and announce themselves. But today's context view is one of those that requires a closer look to really see what's there. The average person looking at these will just say, well, come on, these are just rocks. Well, to me, they look like decorative parts of a building, if you want to make that conjecture. But if you say, well, are they just rocks? You need to go a little bit deeper with your analysis. For example, the long piece on the right has a square base, with at least 3 of the 90-degree angles clearly visible to form a perfect square. Just coincidence? All right, let's resort to the anomalist creed of context is critical. Go to the locator dot on the left and you can see a perfectly rectangular bar with a cubed end lying in the sand. Now go to the locator dot above it and see another perfectly rectangular slab lying on its edge. A case could be made for many other items in this image, but these are just the most obvious. Now these are clearly manufactured items, designed by an intelligent hand. Years, perhaps decades from now, we will walk the sands of Mars, and exoarchaeological excavations will begin in earnest, if they haven't already. Here's another example. When we look at these images, a lot of times all we see are just broken rocks, and, for the most part, that's exactly what they are. But when you take a close-up look for yourself, sometimes things change. I mean, we're not seeing anything really popping out of this picture, but the item that's circled, even though it doesn't look unusual, has some things about it that need examination. As we get in closer, you can see that the rock sticking up from the surrounding sand has markings and layers to it that just don't seem natural. And I wouldn't mind just chalking it up to wind and sand and proclaiming along with NASA that it's just another rock, even though it kind of looks like boilerplate, the metal that forms the outside of a device that's used to generate heat or pressure. But as in all anomaly hunting, once again, context is key. Look at the 2 locator dots close by the boilerplate, just to the left. A perfect 90-degree angle formed by what looks like half a rectangular box. What a coincidence. And look to the right, a flawlessly semicircular something or other poking out from the sand. Just another coincidence, right? Well, you put them all together, and that spells artificial in my book. Okay, this context view really isn't much to look at, unless you want to maybe take a closer look at that little vertical black line over there on the right. Now look at this interesting rock formation, if that's what it is. It does look an awful lot like a heavy-duty pipe wrench standing on end. Now, yeah, it could be erosion. No doubt. It's sedimentary rock, wind and sand. They do weird things. But look at the base of the wrench and notice the 6 symmetrical U-shaped tubes. They're all lined up, and they're in various states of decomposition through erosion and weathering. Now, I say again, context is critical when you're determining whether an object is a genuine anomaly or merely a fascinating ventifact, an artifact formed by wind. In this case, the presence of the tubes makes me think rather strongly that this could be a tool. And now that I think of it, it looks more like a quick grip than anything else. Or it could be a control lever or some other mechanical device that's managed to poke its head above the Martian sand. Now, am I going to insist on this interpretation? Nah. There are just too many truly convincing anomalies to risk building a case on this one item alone, but it's also just too compelling to simply ignore. Now, this context view is one where the anomalies really pop out over there on the right. Rigidly perfect, non-fractal lines are kind of tough to ignore. What do you see there? I see a stack of frames. They're straight lines and right angles. They go way beyond the effects of wind and sand. The white arrow points to a square vertical plate that sticks up from the sand. Now I'm tempted to connect it visually with the double frame at the left, and it makes me want to conjecture that this was a box of some kind, perhaps housing machinery. Given the non-fractal nature of the smaller items scattered within the box, this does seem to make sense. And I'm wondering if fragile frames is the right label. I mean, yeah, they look thin and fragile, but then again, they have survived for millennia, presumably, in the harshly abrasive surface conditions on Mars. Would any of our manufactured items survive in like manner? And would any alien probes of the future, sent to examine the surface of a once lush and verdant Earth, turn as resolutely away from such obvious evidence? Hopefully, the alien scientists would actually embrace true science instead of the twisted agenda evidenced by our own exploration efforts. Okay, let's wrap things up with a really juicy item. It just baffles me that items like this particular discovery don't excite burning interest, especially in the scientific community that professes interest in expanding the boundaries of our somewhat limited contemporary knowledge. It's easy enough to look at today's context view and say, yeah, so what, while stifling a yawn. Now, if you haven't already figured it out, I feel it's important to provide the context within which an anomaly is found, not only for the additional information it can provide, but also to encourage other anomaly hunters to take a good, close look at any images coming down from NASA. This is an amazing object. It looks like a carved or shaped pinnacle from a building. Maybe it was once on top of a tower, but was toppled to the ground by the horrific cataclysm that put the entire planet of Mars into a high-speed blender. Look at the base. What may be a metal plate is bent around its bottom. Looking around a bit more, notice the arrow pointing out the sheared boulder with 4 90-degree angles. The sheared portion looks laser cut with absolute perfection. The second arrow, just above the pinnacle, shows a nicely made slab supported underneath, all one even symmetrical thickness, and of course, the ever-present 90-degree angles that nature has such a tough time pulling off. On the upper right, another arrow points out something indecipherable but clearly artificial. Put them all together, and we're looking at a collapsed structure. Let's move into the absolute limit of resolution for a closer look. Now, honestly, how can anyone look at this and proclaim it to be nothing but a rock? The visual evidence continues to mount as we creep forward in the slow disclosure scenario. Is that what's happening here? Or is this just another item that NASA's image analysts forgot to Photoshop out? Hey, thanks for stopping by and having a look today. There is a whole lot more to come. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And in the meantime, this is your buddy Dave over at MarsX3D. Be well.